And then Roberta, I will, you should be able to do screen sharing now, correct? You should get
now. Okay, we still have an infinite regress, but let's not worry about it. All right, so we're good. Let's get ahead while we still have a chance here. With my infinite regress, that's fascinating. All right, so first I wanted to say was, how do you get your iPad onto your computer screen? Well, there's this cute little program called Reflector, which you can see up here on the upper left, called Reflector. Reflector there. Okay? So you have to buy that. I forget how much it is. It's only like $16, okay? And then you install it on your computer. And then you open it. And you go to your iPad. And you have to be on the same Wi-Fi network. You click twice on the side. You flip over here. And you can see that you have a little blue screen with a triangle there in the middle, sort of in the middle, next to the video thing. You click on that, and you click on MacBook Pro of Roberta, and turn on your mirroring. Now, I'm not going to mess with it, because it took me a while to get this to work for some bizarre reason. So we'll just assume that you now totally understand how to use this little AirPlay thing. This only works with iPad 2 on up. I have an iPad 1. But I'm on my mother's iPad, which is a bit of a pity because I had a lot of stuff I could have shown you on the other iPad, but at least this is working. So we're good. Any questions so far on the AirPlay thing?
No, that looks good so far.
We're good? All right, let's get out of here. So, away we go. Now, for a long time, I did most of my graphic recording on the iPad using brushes, but I was using an old brushes, which is no longer available. So I tried out the new brushes. And I've discovered that the new brushes is really not adapted anymore to graphic recording. I will show it to you very quickly, okay? But frankly, I do not recommend it, especially in terms of how easy it is to write, how fast it goes. Here is brushes, the new brushes. Come on, baby. Oh yeah, type on the iPad, don't I? Alright, so let's get in there, create a new painting just for fun. Let's make it, sorry, I keep typing on my computer instead of my iPad. Create. So you create that. And then, as you can see, you have a fairly simple interface here. So down here is the size of whatever brush you're using. Here is your color wheel and your color palette. If you want to add colors, you can select up here, click on this, and drag it down here. Whoops, into one of these little thingies. Whoops, didn't work that. It's not working. That's weird. Well, whatever. Let's put it here instead. So, you can just change your colors by just messing around here. As you can see, there's a circle on the other side, which changes color depending on where you place this little circle in the white square. That allows you to create color. You can so that's for the value of the color. And as for the actual hue, you get to the hue in the hue circle here. That's just basically your basic color, green, red, whatever, it's called a hue. And then up here in the square on the left, you have your values, okay? So you can go from dark to light. Personally, as we all know, when you're graphic recording or sketchnoting, you have to go fast. So ideally, I usually have a palette of basic colors I use. Unfortunately, this is my mother's iPad, so you don't get to see my palette, but mine is kind of similar to this. These are the basic colors I use. I probably would add an orange in there somewhere, but a brighter orange. I'd probably add an orange like this. Hold on, put it up there. Yeah, maybe that's not good. I'll try out that orange, and I would put that orange here, for example. Whatever. And I would probably have a brighter red. Not sure why I'm not allowed to put these reds here, but let's put it here just for fun. All right. So basically, I have some simple colors I use a lot, and when I show you my examples, you'll see basically how I function. I try not to use too many colors, but this is a discipline I impose upon myself because I'm very color-oriented. Literally, with just black and red, you could do a lot. Okay. Okay, so much for color. I would recommend sticking to 5 max. Say 5 colors plus black would be really the max you would want to use when you're doing your graphic recording, unless you really are good at color and organizing that color. Okay, so that was color. Then you have these two little keys here and here at the bottom left. Do you see where I am? get a little brush icon and a little eraser icon, which should seem obvious. The eraser is to erase, the brush is to draw. Once you're in the little draw thing there, you click on this thing here, if you see where it is. It's that little squiggle thing, squiggle brush form. And then you have these millions of brushes. Now this is where things get really complicated. What you have to do is kind of preset all your brushes. So for the moment, if we give it a test, if we click on this, we're going to have something like this. Oops, I don't even have that. Why not? Oh, because it's so small. There we go. You'll have some... No, it's not working either. What's wrong with this brush?
Roberta, we have a question. If you're using your stylus or your finger?
I'm using my stylus. I'm going to show... Oh, good idea. I'll show you the stylus. All right, let's look at the stylus before we do anything else. The stylus, I actually prepared a page for you guys, if you can see it. Here we have the Wacom Bamboo Stylus. This is the one I use, and I've tried a lot of other styluses, and I think we have a few here on the left. You have this one. Does it show you? No, that's just the color. Okay, sorry. No, there are lots of different styluses. This is the one I have tested many. I think this is the best. If you look at the internet, people tend to agree that when it comes to drawing and doing graphic recording, this is definitely the way to go. There are a bunch of others, but I'm just going to talk to you about this one. I mean, if you want to test the other ones, be my guest. Personally, I find them not as easy to use, primarily because there's, when it comes to, say, working quickly, sometimes they don't record everything you do. For example, if you're drawing a fast curve, like it might just get the beginning and the end, and you'll have the space in the middle, which is a disaster when you're writing letters, right? So this is why I really like this one. It works really well, and it's not too expensive, so I would go for that. I can also, of course, record with my finger. Now, the reason I don't do this too much is for the simple reason that my finger tends to sweat. And when my finger sweats, it sticks to the surface of the iPad, which is really not easy to manage. Turn on the air conditioning, it's too hot. Anyway, so there you go. So back to our brushes. So basically, you have all these brushes, and you have to preset them. So we're not going to look at that too much, because personally, I tried doing some graphic recording with the new brushes, and I found it very clumsy, and also, when it comes to writing text, it's just not doing it anymore. Most people are now using brushes for digital painting purposes. So I think they've improved this particular app completely in a way which is not adapted to what we do. So let's get out of brushes, okay? So we don't waste time on brushes. You guys can play with it if you want. Basically, you have to preset all this stuff and make sure it's just a little complicated. It's preset on my iPad, but not on my mom's. And I would have done it, but it's so ineffective, I figured why bother. Okay, so we've got this other program here called Sketchbook Pro. Now, Sketchbook Pro is great. It's $5, I believe. It's not free. So I just got into Sketchbook Pro. This is what I was playing with this morning. But let's go back here, and let's create a new one. So to do that, you go down here to the bottom left, and you click on the plus. And you have many formats that you can use, okay, which is kind of convenient because, you know, it might give you more space to work depending on how long you're recording, but usually I've been using this one here and creating, like, series of how can I put this, boards that I didn't stick together in Photoshop. I'll show you some examples later. Okay, so this is a cool program. You can see here on the bottom center a little circle. You click on that circle, and lo and behold, you've got a whole bunch of palettes here, palette colors here, okay? Up here, you have the usual hue wheel with the value wheel, value square inside. There are other things you can do with this, but we'll not go into that. Let's stay simple. So you've got these preset colors, which generally are pretty useful, I would say. I tend to use these colors when I'm recording graphically. And you also have a whole ton of brushes here, as you can see. Now, these are all preset. There's probably a way to introduce more brushes into this. I haven't figured that one out yet. But guess what? There's more brushes. That's what's so great about this program. It's quite versatile. Now, what you have here on the left is pretty much sufficient for graphic recording, I would say. And I personally will tell you very briefly, very soon, which ones I use. But just quickly to look at the potential of the program, up here you have a whole bunch of brushes. This is the first page of brushes, okay? And you just keep on flipping through it, and as you can see, there's a lot of different brushes here, all of which are a lot of fun. And then some of them are even weirder, like you have this one where you have little objects which turn into lines like this, or like this, or like this. And I can't really imagine using it, but some people would probably enjoy it. Then you have this one, which of course gives you yet again quite a series of little brushes you can use. This is the one I tend to use, okay? And there's probably one more page. Oh yeah, I got these little figures, got little insects, got little shapes, and there's a lot of stuff here. So depending on your style and how you use graphic recording and how convenient you might find these little figures, you can do what you want. Okay, I don't use any of this stuff except for the rainbow. And just to show you how you can use these brushes, they can become bigger and smaller. You see that radius thing? That's defining the radius of a line, okay? So I usually leave it at about this radius, but you can move it back. You can also change its opacity, which is often very useful for brushes in general, okay? So that's how transparent it is. And so I'm leaving it now on total transparency there. Okay, so you click out of that by clicking on the paper, and you go like this, and you have a nice circle, right? All right, so now let's say, oh my God, I don't want that circle, what do I do? Now you have this handy little arrow up there at the top next to the circle with the eye in it. See that coming off and on? And here's a circle to reestablish what you did. These two arrows up here allow you to back up. You can only back up about 5 or 6 steps with this program. With brushes, you could back up more, but that was the old brushes, so forget brushes. And so there you have it for backing, going back and forth. And then you have a little control up here, which allows you to either draw, which is what it's at now, but you could also have straight lines. See what I mean? You can also have a square, or a rectangle, or a circle. So these can probably come in handy. I mean, I could see some people using these really well. Personally, I doubt I would think of using them at any time, but let's go back to this. This here is for the mirror image thing, so that when you draw, it gives you a mirror image like that. Now, that's not terribly useful to us, but it's fun to play with if you want to do some Rorschach drawings or something. All right, and then here, this is where things get interesting. Now, the old brushes was really interesting because it would record everything you did, and then you could turn it into a little movie, which is very cool. I think it was our friend Rachel, works with David Sibbett, who actually did a little film using that, and I've done several if you look at YouTube. So basically here, when you look at what's going on here, you have text, which means you can actually type in text if you want, which could be useful, I imagine. Transform, which involves changing size and so forth. I never use it. And time-lapse record is great because it will actually record your recording, so to speak. And then you can make a little film out of it, give it to your client or sell it to your client or whatever you want to do. It's very useful. Time-lapse record is new. They recently introduced it. And I'm extremely grateful because the new brushes doesn't have it anymore. Old brushes have it. This one doesn't. So there you go for time-lapse record. So let's say I want to record. I go time-lapse record, and I click on the little button there, and then it's going to begin recording whatever it is I do here. Say I want to write something. Whoops, that was dumb. See, I forgot to turn off the mirror thing there. Turn that off. There we go. So there you go. You just recorded that. And when you're finished recording, you click on the little check thing. Brings this up. Tells you to save or discard. And you can save to the photo library, which I'm not going to do because, frankly, I could care less. Or discard. Okay? And every time you turn it off and on, you get another sort of sequence. And then you have to put it all in iMovie and stick it all together. Unless you're just recording nonstop. Okay? So I'm going to discard that. Discard movie. Get out of here. Look at how you do that. There you go. Okay, so does anybody have any questions so far?
Oh, that's good so far.
Good? All right.
Rosanna's typing a question. Do I hang on a second?
Okay, the sound is terrible, so let me read it.
Okay.
Roberta, is Rosanna here? Do you know if Sketchbook Pro has the features for you to cut, copy, paste, and resize?
No, it does not. It does not have that function. If you want to
I
start using something like New Draw. New Draw can do that.
Yeah, that's what I use. I use New Notes.
Oh my God, this is insane. I can't hear you guys. You're going to have to type. The sound is really crazy because of this infinite regression thing. As you can see on my screen, it's quite interesting, but it's impossible for me to hear you. Okay, yeah, the new draw does. The thing I don't like about that is that the brushes are really limited. Okay, so that's why I don't use it very much. Plus, I always was trained as an artist way back when to get it right the first time, and so I don't do much copy and pasting. But if I have to, what I do is I go into this program called. Hold on. How big is this? Should do it. All right, it's a program called ScanScribe. Let me show you guys something while I'm going to write ScanScribe. What I'm going to do is I'm going to blow this up because the secret to graphic recording, you see the percentages going up and down there? The secret to graphic recording on the iPad is a lot of zooming, okay? It takes a little practice. I'm going to zoom up to about 200, and I'm going to write, well, no, obviously it's not going to work, so I'm going to make it bigger. Here you see an example of me making the thing bigger by using this brush properties thing. The two arrows on either side make it bigger. As you can see up there, you have size, not a little rectangle on the top. You have the size changing, okay? So it's getting bigger and bigger and smaller and smaller. It has its limits, depending on the brush. And then this bottom one here is going to change the opacity. I usually tend to leave it at 100, but you can definitely take it down, okay? So this little circle here, the ones on the left and right are for size, and the one on the bottom is for transparency, okay? So here is the one I was going to tell you about. It's called ScanScribe. And this is something you can use to good effect. First of all, to clean the photos of your graphic recordings on paper even, but also you can just import stuff and start playing around with it. So if I really have to move stuff, that's where I go. ScanScribe is free. It's a prototype, and you can Google it and download it onto your computer. I believe you can have it both on Mac and PC. So much for ScanScribe. Okay, so now I'm going to show you something else. Here we have another function which is called the eraser. Now let's say I want to get rid of ScanScribe here. All right, let's just do it. Ooh. All right, there you go. It's all gone. All right, so much for that function. That was a good brush, but as you can see on the left, it was a little eraser shape thing right there. All right, so generally speaking, I tend to use this brush here and this brush here when I'm working. So let's take a look at what those are all about. This is like a pen function. So let's choose a nice bright red. Big is it? Not very big. Let's try that. All right, so we have here this line here. So as you can see, it's a little fadey. Then you've got this brush here. So look at the size. You have to preset your sizes generally, because it's a little clumsy. The other brush is just so much easier to use, but ScanScribe is pretty good too. I just tend to preset my brush sizes. And then this one here, I will probably go back into it here. And possibly opacity is okay, color is okay. Because if you need to adjust properties, you have to get back up into this here. So back into our brushes by clicking on the little circle, the pencil thing. And that's going to be this. Okay, I'm thinking, oh my God, I don't want that big. So I'm going to take it down to this. And that'll be for really fine stuff. And you got other brushes like this one here. Isn't bad either. How big is it now? Let me see. Very small. Might be good for lettering, you know. Nice and distinct. And on you go. So basically I choose 3 brushes. Let's say we're going to use the first 3 here just for fun. And then I also have this little trick of the trade, which is similar to the way we use pastel on paper. Okay? So, the way you do that is by creating a layer. Now, to create a layer, you go up into the upper right, and you've got this layer thing here. Okay? You hit the plus, and you get another layer, which you can either see or not see, depending on whether you click on the eye or not. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it underneath the current layer. So, one little tip and trick you need to know is that when you're going to do graphic recording, you should initially create 2 layers. And try to remember which layer you're on. Because basically, you're going to be recording on the top layer and using the bottom layer to create textures and colors that could sort of unify different areas of your recording. I'll give you an example. All right, so here we go. Let's try this. How big is it? Oops, sorry. Down a bit. And then down. All right, so we're going to take this one and we're going to say, sorry, I don't know why it's doing that. Sorry, let me try this one. Sorry, I'm not used to this because I usually use old brushes. I'm really sorry, but this is what I'm going to adopt from now on because of the recording function. Alright, so some text. We're going to have up here layers. And just for fun, let's do a drawing there of the layer icon, which is this. Okay, there's a, oh boy, that's a disaster. Hold on, folks. No, Roberta. Oh. Alright, here you go. Much better, right? Alright, so there we have layers. And now the trouble is, in the good old brushes, all you had to do was tap twice, and it would go back to the normal size. Now you have to do it by hand. You may wonder how I am changing this size. The way I'm doing it, anybody who has an iPad has done this. You use your 2 fingers and when you draw your fingers apart on the screen, it gets bigger, and when you pinch it in, it gets smaller. So when I'm zooming here, I'm zooming back and forth by pinching in and out with my finger, okay? Just to let you know. Alright, so back to my layers here. I very stupidly just did that on the wrong layer. You can see why you shouldn't do that. So let's create another layer here and put it under the other one. Go. And now we're going to see what we can do with various textures. So let's say you want to use this. This is your typical airbrush. Let's look at the actual settings here. So I can be more or less opaque. As you can see, I tend to leave it about here. The radius can also be big or small depending on your usage. I tend to use big. Let's say I'm going to choose pretty yellow, and I'm going to do this. So as you can see, it's on the bottom layer. Okay. Now I'm thinking, oh my God, that's way too strong. So I'm going to do that. And I'm going to go back into my brush. I'll go up here, move down a little, and leave this opacity, and go back here, make sure I'm on the wrong layer, and do this. Okay, that's the tip of the trick for layers. Now, that means that you can basically define textures that help you define different areas. So here I'm using another texture. I usually define 3 textures. The airbrush, one of these little googly thingies, and sometimes I play around with some of these other ones. So let's say we're going to choose this one and change the color. Look at the parameters here to make sure that usually these are preset. I usually preset everything. This seems okay to me, and so I'm going to go back and make sure I'm on the right layer, and I'm going to call this another section. So as you can see, this is how you can use the various layers and textures to sort of replace the function of a pastel, which you would normally use if you were doing graphic recording on paper. So just for fun, let's just choose another fun brush here and make our lives more interesting. Here we go. Let's make it smaller. And I'm going to go with this just for fun. Okay. Oh. Okay, that was just for fun. So we've gone into the brushes. We've looked at the underground textures. We've looked at layers. What else did I want to show you here? And I guess basically we can move on to, I don't know, what would you guys like to talk about? I was thinking of talking about how to organize your page. We talked about zooming already. You'd be surprised how far in you can zoom and how small it can be. For example, if I'm in here and I want to make this smaller, you can write, say, oh, that's working too well, excuse me. I picked the wrong mesh, sorry. You can write something quite small. When you zoom back in, there it is. So you can do a lot with the zoom. I would definitely recommend you practice zooming because it's something that takes a while to master. Okay, so another thing we can talk about maybe is how we can outline titles. That's a useful thing to do when you need to emphasize something. Let's say you want to do a big title. We could call this, for example, what do we call this here? Digital, sorry, no, that's not good. As you can see, I really miss my own iPad. This one isn't set up properly. Alright, so, let's make this one getting bigger. Okay, let's try this one. I'm not used to it yet, sorry. Okay, so we're going to call this digital. Oh, wait a minute. You will see I'm making a mistake again. It's hard to talk and do this at the same time. Go back up here. So you see I just switched layers to the top? Well, middle maybe. Alright, digital. Digital. Recording. Alright, so we just had a thing on digital recording, and there's fun stuff you can do to enhance titles. So what I often do is I go into layer, go up to another layer, higher layer, which would be this one, and then I go and get maybe this one, make it really small. Again, I do this easier in brushes, but unless you can get the old brushes, you're out of luck. This one is that good. There we go. Alright, then you blow this up, and you do this. Now, some people actually do the outlines and then fill them in. I do the fill in, and then I do the outline. To each his own, right? So, there you go, digital. And as you notice, I had to zoom in to do this. So, and I zoom back out, and as you can see, it really stands out nicely. And there's another cool thing you can do, which is shadowing. Okay, and shadowing gives some nice sort of depth to your recording. Now, how do you do that? That's really obvious. You go into good old, what's it called, airbrush, and you go and adjust it, of course, so that it is much smaller. Put it down there, make sure opacity is not too strong, although it's hard to say because I got it in black. But then we're going to go, and for once we're going to mess around with the colors. So where are we going to go? We need some gray. Let's try this gray here. And let's give a little shadow to tricks and tips. So we zoom in, and you just sort of do this. It's kind of a dark shadow, I have to admit. I might lighten that one up. There you go. And you black out again, and you got a nice shadow. Okay? You can also choose a lighter gray, like this one. Go back here and start creating... Oops, wait a minute. First, before you do that, what color am I on? Probably this one would be better. So, since the digital is on this middle layer, you want to get underneath it so it's not going to cover like I just did here, okay? So, moving back there. Now you'll see the difference. See? It's behind it. And I'm on that other layer. So 3 layers is good. 2 is okay, but 3 is better. Alright, there you go. So you end up with some great shadows. I use this a lot. And then you just move back in and you can see how nice it looks. Compare that digital to the one on the bottom, recording, very boring. And yeah, so that's one tip and trick I use all the time. What else can I tell you? Okay, so to summarize, I guess I still think Sketchbook Pro is currently the best deal, unless you have the old brushes. Before you record, you need to organize, you need to create 2 layers, you need to make sure you find your 3 text brushes, and you also the 3 main texture brushes so that you can do the backgrounds and the sort of pastel effects and all that. And then your palette is pretty much pretty defined unless you have some special colors you need to use for a client. They're all here pretty much. That's pretty useful. And then I guess maybe I could show you some examples, unless somebody sees it strange. All right. Anyway, anybody want to see some examples? You guys can look it up. Go into Photoshop, go on Google, and they'll tell you what those formats are in inches and in centimeters, or whatever it is you're working in. It doesn't really matter. What matters is the fact that this is actually amazing because you can project as you work. And now I'm going to show you some stuff I prepared for you here. And unfortunately it's in French because I actually showed this to some other people in French. But can everybody see this PowerPoint presentation?
It's starting to load.
Oh, okay. Somebody's asking me something. I'm not sure why it's not. Oh, there you go. Any luck?
Yes.
All right, good. So, moving on to the diaporama function, load presenter. That should work. If this works, I really do. Really getting paranoid. Look at this insanity. What is that? Jeez. Oh, thank you. All right, out we go. How do I get out of this mess? There we go. Let's just keep it here, all right? Because I'm starting to freak. Okay, so basically, if you see here, I'm going to blow this up a little here. You can see here me with my iPad recording, which is being pretty second. Okay, so here are two examples of the projection in real time thing. So you have people in the room and the iPad recording is being projected on the screen in real time. Now, usually it looks better than this, but it all depends on if they turn the lights off in the room and all that sort of thing. So that is something you have to take into account. People need to understand that you either have to put it on one of those big TV screens so that it's really clear and readable, or they need to turn the lights or dim the lights, do something like that. Anyway, that's one of the limitations. So, there are lots of technical solutions to that. Okay, let's see here, folks. Back to PowerPoint. So, the one you see here is here, okay? If you want to take a closer look. Hold on, I need to do something like this. I wish I could get the full screen thing going, but I'm afraid it'll screw up my computer. Let's try it again just for fun. Fichage, diaporama. There we go, now it's usually working. There we go, alright, so here we have the one I just showed you, okay? And so as you can see, this is an interesting example because it shows how I organized it in a nonlinear way, but it's also nevertheless very much related to the mind map technique, but without all those little branches floating around. So you've got, as you can see, I also have some yellow pastel on the left, which is defining areas, and the same on the right. That's a mind map type. This is another good example of what I've been doing. We did a open space thing in France on internet. It's all in French, of course, but that's life. You can live with that, right? So as you can see, here you have an example on the top of how I was recording throughout the day. And then at the end of the day, I go home and I sort of stitch them all together in Photoshop, which you do just by taking Photoshop, putting your first image in there, and then just sort of multiplying by the width of the image in creating a big canvas. So you make a really long canvas, and then you start sort of copying and pasting in all the other images. The nice thing about iPad is you don't have to clean your image. And most of the time, I don't have to do anything with it. Sometimes I might, change something here or there, or maybe make it clear in various ways. But this is a good example of textures, You've got the river runs through it technique, which is one I use a lot when I don't really know what's going to happen. And that is really smart because basically what I do is for each one of my little boards here, I first draw sort of a line through it, so to speak. The river runs through it. There it is. And then as I start recording, whenever these major themes start to emerge at a certain period, once I sense the major theme coming up, I throw it into the river that's running through it, and it gives people a sort of a series of what can you call it, themes that sort of run through the discussion, and that's a good way for them to sort of remember what happened. So here's a typical example of what I tend to do. I also include lots of people in my recordings because I can't help but feel that what we're doing is emphasizing our connectedness and all that sort of thing, so I like to throw people in there. That's just me. Then we have another example here, which was sort of a more limited kind of graphic recording. They had all these workshops going on, and I had to go into each workshop and sort of listen to what was going on and draw little vignettes for each workshop. So we call these like conceptual vignettes, if you like. But so it's kind of a limited type of iPad recording. This is another one I did as well, another river runs through it technique. As you can see, I turned this into a Prezi, which is fun. Here's another river runs through it thing, and people just use these. What they do, sometimes they ask me afterwards to cut it up into pieces and turn it into a report, things like that. This was a fun project because I was working for the city of Strasbourg, and they invited me into their theater. They have a very famous theater there, and what they did was they had this enormous screen. It must have been like, I don't know, 7 yards by 8 yards, or 7 meters by 8 meters. I think in meters now. I'm living in France. So, and it was a huge screen, and they had the most wonderful projector, and so consequently, as I was working, it was being projected in this enormous screen, and everybody in the theater was talking. So basically, I was recording everything that was going on. It was a participatory democracy project where they were trying to get the population to contribute in defining the various things that were important to them in terms of the future development of the town of Strasbourg. And so I basically captured all the themes that they were talking about, and then they used this document for a year in developing other workshops and so forth and so on. And then I did the same thing a year later. And this is another one I did for a client who was actually a hairdresser. What they did was a hairdressing company. It's like a chain of hairdressing establishments. And the people who run those establishments are independent, but they accept, it's like a McDonald's. You can run the McDonald's, but you're still McDonald's. So they had a big convention with all these incredibly creative people. And so they wanted me to do a graphic recording of everything that was going on during their morning presentation. So I did. And we have an example. The river runs through it again. As you can see, this is very, very clever technique, what you say. Now everybody's going to use it, and I'm going to be famous, right? All right, so very funny, huh? Anyway, so here, what do we got here? Forget what this was. All right, this was a sort of free discussion among a bunch of psychiatrists working in I shouldn't say this, never mind, get rid of that. It's probably not something, I can't show you that either. This is being recorded, isn't it? Oh dear. Okay, look at this one. This is chaos theory. So somebody was giving a talk on chaos theory, and this is an example of my sketch note. So again, this is a good example of different size text, different ways to enhance the text, and also the way the various textures and colors can sort of group the different parts of the presentation. This was something I did just for fun, which is totally incomprehensible to anybody but me, probably. This is sketchnoting by a guy named Yves Bonnefoy, who's this incredibly famous French philosopher and poet. He was going on and on. He was all over the place. But I sort of tried to make this out of it so it could kind of convey what he was talking about, all in French, of course. So those are some examples. I would show you more, but actually some of these are probably not something I could actually permit. I could show you this. This is about mentoring. And basically, they had this workshop of mentoring in a big French company. And so there was this image of the elephant that kept cropping up, the elephant in the room. And by that, they meant that women needed special mentoring because everybody thinks everything's equal now, and of course nothing is. You've got still got the glass ceiling. And so this elephant theme kept cropping up. And so that's why you have that elephant floating around. So that's another good example of how I would group different parts of the session together using the so-called pastel or airbrush technique. As you can see, the color in the background gives you sort of ways of grouping it all together. And that helps a lot because, as you know, when you're graphically recording, things can get totally out of control. You have no idea where they're going, and so that's very useful. Can I show you this? Yeah, this is just another example of textures in the background, kind of organizing everything. And you have the tableau ronde, meaning round table down there. It's a good example of different ways to enhance text. And you have the same thing in trajectoire up here, where you have shadow outlining and an arrow, just to make sure we know what we're talking about here. Okay, I guess that's about it, right? Yeah, there you go. All right. Let's go and get on. There we go. All right. So, does anybody have any more questions?